I'm here with winemaker Jeff Mangahas at Selyem in your estate vineyard here on the main property. And we're in a block that's interesting because in this row you have a lot of different clones of Pinot Noir. Most people are probably familiar with things like Mount Eden or Swan, or then some Dijon clones. There's hundreds of clones of Pinot Noir, and in here you have 18
different Pinot Noir
that you spread out.
Yep.
And what's the reason for that?
Yeah, so this is a 3-acre piece, all one rootstock. The different clones are interesting because they each have a different flavor profile. They have a different tannin perception, a different acid level, and arguably, Pinot Noir, all those different flavor profiles, when you blend them together, makes a really complex wine. So this is really a concept of putting all of them together, or 18 of them anyways, from different flavor profiles, growing them all on one rootstock on one piece of land, and we harvest all of these grapes at the same time, and we make a singular wine called mass selection. And I feel like that it really creates a lot of complexity in the wine because of, if you diagram out how each one of the clones matures over time, they all have a slightly different starting point in terms of when they bud break, when they flower. So that really does follow all the way through the harvest time, where you're seeing different levels of acid and tannin. And by harvesting them all together at the same time, you really do create layers in the wine. So it's a really different concept. And taking a page out of, sometimes like Old Vine Zinfandel from Sonoma County, where they are field blends of different, in that case, they're different varieties. But when you harvest those wines together, all those different varieties together, it creates a more layered, complex wine.
It's always fascinating how you can come at the same thing from two different sides in the world of wine. One approach is, I only want one clonal selection across all my vineyard sites, so that I can get differences from the vineyard sites. You're saying I want complexity early on by building it through different clones, and then keeping the baseline of just one vineyard site.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's no one right answer, here or there, but I think it's different concepts, and you carry those through. And if you do taste this wine, if you ever get a chance to taste this wine, you can definitely see all the peaks and valleys. And again, I think arguably that's what makes, especially Pinot Noir, something that's so thinly veiled in terms of, flavor compared to Syrah and Cabernet, right? I mean, you can really get the layers and the peaks and the valleys, and I think that's what makes for a very interesting wine.
Now, you've been here since 2011. You've been in the Russian River Valley for your whole 20-plus year career making wine.
Right, yeah.
When do you think the vineyard starts to take over more so than clonal selection, or does it?
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating question. There's no real science behind it, but definitely, I think after a certain, first couple years, the plants are still developing a root system. I think you really do need to get into that 20-plus year range to get that level of consistency. Where it starts to shed its sort of identity as a clone is yet to be determined, but what we do know is the older the vine, the more polished the vineyard or the wine gets. And so we have a number of examples of 50-plus-year-old vines, that we source from that, really kind of typifies that statement.
It becomes a textural note, a mouthfeel.
Textural notes, the tannin development. So it's in a different way, from what I've talked about here, where the different clones creates the complexity. There with older vines, it's just there's intensity and a polish that. So my hope is that in another 25 years, so we're standing in a 20-plus-year-old vineyard with the 18 different Pinot Noir clones. Maybe in another 20-plus years, all the differences might be normalized. And so what we're talking about really is adaptation to the site, right? So hopefully what we'll see is less difference, and take, in 25 years, less difference from the clonal perspective and more about the site. And, it's probably a gradual effect, but So.
All right. I like talking clones. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.